Nice to meet everybody. Francis Sideco with Tirias Research. So what Lori and Luke asked me to talk about today is really just try to set the stage a little bit as far as the impact of the post-quantum threat to really not just telecommunications, but it really is kind of a global concern that obviously with how critical telecommunications is, obviously also needs to be addressed by the telecommunications industry. So just kind of try to set a little bit of a stage here. Just for background, Tirias Research were C-suite advisors to most of the large not just telecommunications, but high technology companies globally. And we have a lot of expertise in both business business strategy, but also in technical and product strategy as well. So here's the thing about cryptography in the quantum era. I like to call quantum generational technology, and I think if you guys follow sports, you'll hear certain athletes being called maybe generational talents, and I think to definitely a very high degree, quantum is one of those kinds of technologies that comes once in a generation. It has very huge impact, not just in the technology segment, but really across the board. So, I think we all know cybersecurity now is already a threat, right? Even before quantum, just with what we have now. The current estimates by various research companies, including the research that IBM has done, is that on average, each data breach costs about $4.45 million, for a company to deal with, and that's a global average. Certain countries, it's actually a lot higher than that, as much as double. So in the U.S., it's actually closer to $9 million per data breach, and I think definitely last year. In 2023. So even after a very high, rate of occurrence in 2022, from 22 to 23, there was a 72% increase in cybercrime, over that time. And I think that's just going to continue to go up. And I'll skip a little bit to the last bullet there. IBM at the latest World Economic Forum in Davos really said, quantum is going to create a cybersecurity Armageddon, and it's really just going to accelerate this current pace of increase. As it stands now, our digital economy is about just shy of $16 trillion. And the cost of cybercrime globally is outpacing that growth. So digital economy is already growing relatively fast, but cybercrime and the cost of cybercrime is actually outpacing it. So that same number of 8.4 trillion last year, the year before that was 6 trillion. And over the next 3 years, it's going to grow almost 3 times that number. So even today, about 50% of the size of the global digital payments and digital economy size is how much it costs to deal with the cybercrime associated with it. So it's a pretty high, and that's just going to increase as quantum comes to bear. So it's a global footprint. The quantum threat is a global threat, and you see a fair number of the top world organizations out there all have some kind of quantum threat initiative that they are doing. In fact, Sebastian over here, I was just chatting with earlier from the World Economic Forum. He's going to be one of our panelists in one of the panels later. We've got United Nations. We've got specific national organizations that are involved in trying to understand and figure out, okay, what is it that we need to do to try to deal with this? And it makes sense, right, that it is a global threat, given that how prevalent cryptography is in our everyday lives. Cryptography whether you know it or not, is in every aspect of the human condition, whether as an individual or as a corporation. So I just listed a bunch of the different things here that cryptography is the basis of. And truly, if this gets compromised, it will bring our current economies down completely. Because if you think about even just as simple as opening up your house with some of the smart home capabilities that I think are very prevalent now, you couldn't do it without cryptography. Even just making phone calls, and I don't know how many people have been buying food here around the show, using your Apple Pay or Google Pay. That wouldn't work, right? So, how big of an impact is that really? And when we look at I just kind of grabbed 5 different items of that are growing significantly in terms of types of things that we would do on an everyday basis. Anything from smart homes to software-defined vehicles, obviously generative AI, which is kind of a big part of this show, and obviously telecoms and also digital payments. This is in trillions of dollars global threat, because we can't do any of this stuff without us making sure that our cryptography is the integrity of our cryptography is solid. So what that really translates to is by 2030, we're on pace as a global economy to be at about $150 trillion global GDP. And that's what's at stake if we don't deal with this now. And while not all of this is related to telecom, clearly a vast majority of it, I mean, every industry that I know of wouldn't run just from the workforce without our phones working. And that is what's at risk here. Okay. So the big thing, I think, I'll talk about timelines later on, but it's the title of my presentation is a quantum leap that's needed now, and I firmly believe that time is of the essence. First of all, quantum, it's not necessarily a matter of when or if anymore. It's a matter of when. It is a reality, and I put that picture up there on purpose because it's an actual quantum computer that's doing work now. And I'll leave it to the experts like Lori and her team at IBM to kind of really talk through where that's going, whether now or later. But it's a real computer, and we're getting to the point of quantum utility very quickly. Plus the other thing though is standardization, development, rolling out, design cycles, that all takes years. So we're expecting, by the end of the decade, that we will have a quantum relevant computer that can compromise our encryption. So we're already, if we haven't started yet, we're kind of already behind. So it's a good thing that we're having these kinds of conversations as an industry, because I think there's a big runway that needs to happen so that we're ready when the threat actually materializes. So part of it is the preparation that's required, and I'll talk a little bit in my next slides here of what actually can be done in terms of the preparation. But it's not going to come for free. It's going to come in cost in time, in human resources, and in financial resources. So starting early actually helps to manage that better and being able to amortize that over a longer period of time, as opposed to trying to do it, and if you can even do it in a year or two's time. So additionally, as we all know, with these kinds of with these kinds of impacts, it requires multiple, not just companies, but multiple industries coming together, working together, and that takes time. Just that coordination, there's no way around it. Okay. Additionally, even once we get to a point where we're preparing, we're doing the right things, this is not a one-shot deal. This is something that's going to need to keep iterating. We already know this from just the cybersecurity threat that we have with classical computing now. It's a constant race between who's making the mouse trap for the better mice, better mousetrap, and just kind of keeps going back and forth. And that's going to continue to happen in the post-quantum era. Attacks will evolve, but also the ways we deploy our solutions to deal with attacks are going to evolve as well. So all of that is going to take time. And obviously, I think everybody here has probably heard of store now, decrypt later. So I'm not going to go too deep into that. But our data is actually being harvested now. So the sooner we can get to a point where we can protect that data, the better. So because it's a global threat with a global footprint, a global impact, thankfully, it's also a global response that we're seeing. From the international and the national levels, I showed some of the international, world organizations that have initiatives, but specific countries have their own initiatives as well that they're putting together. But from there, specific industries and actually, our telecom industry is one of the first kind of leading industries that's really taking this on in an organized manner. But then also from a company level. And even though there's various timelines that are out there at each of these different response levels, for the most part, what we're seeing that is now between now and 2027 is where the preparation stages are happening, and then a transition stage. We're seeing a transition stage from 2027 to 2030. After 2030 is where we're really expecting full PQC rollouts as well as mandates by either certain industries or certain governments to have specific types of solutions and capabilities already rolled out. So what does that actually mean? So keep calm. now that we've created a huge amount of FUD, or fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the good thing is we've got a plan. And first thing is prepare. It's a little bit of an eye chart, so I'll kind of walk you through it a little bit. So from a preparation standpoint, it's really just trying to understand the lay of the land. It's trying to understand, as a company or as an industry, what is your current quantum risk, right? Trying to understand where you have cryptography being used and how it's being used. So that's where the generation of the cryptographic bill of materials comes in, is understanding what you're using, where you're using it, how you're using it. But also then, it's not just about where you're using cryptography, but it's also what are your current mechanisms for deploying that cryptography and updating it. It's really important to understand what you have available in terms of how do you, even with classical computing, how do you update your current set of encryption. And then also, obviously, all the work that's happening from a standardization and algorithmic process. The NIST and NSA are taking a big leadership role in that, even globally, but that's also happening in various regions and various countries. So keeping an eye on what's happening at that level. So I'll try to speed it up here a little bit, but really from a prioritization standpoint, is in trying to understand, okay, what happens, how does that impact your actual company and what's happening there. But maybe the only thing I'll kind of highlight here is the need to iterate. And both at this stage, but also at the remediation stage, because you can't do this all in one shot. Even as you're trying to figure out what your current landscape looks like, there's going to have to be some prioritization of what parts of your business should you be looking at first versus maybe later. So there's going to have to be an iteration stage there, but also as you remediate, trying to understand how things are working, and if new threats might have come up, that's going to have to keep happening in a virtuous cycle. Okay, so just some key takeaways. Quantum computing, it's a when, not an if, and to some degree it's already now. Quantum threat is global. It's got global footprint, global impact, global response is what's needed. The time is now to prepare, and yes, it's kind of it is a big threat, but we've got a plan, international efforts underway, and really just prepare, prioritize, remediate, and iterate. So hopefully that sets the stage a little bit. That's the time that I have. How this happens and how this is going to kind of start to get rolled out in our specific industry, I'd like to call Anita up from the NGNM. She's the CEO for NGNM on to kind of talk to us about, okay, specifically for networks and in the future networks, how is this going to look?